The dust hadn't settled yet when Captain Han Do-yoon entered the ruins. The Valkyrie base was nothing but twisted metal and broken crystal now. 3 hours ago it had been a fortress. Now it was a graveyard. His boots crunched on debris as he moved through the wreckage with his team. The air still smelled like burned chemicals and ozone. Do-yoon was tired. Everyone was tired. 3 years of this war had worn them all down to the bone. He was 34 years old but felt 60. His dark hair was streaked with dust, and his combat armor had more dents than he could count. Behind him, Corporal Park Ji-woo kept pace, medical kit bouncing against his hip. "Captain, command wants us to finish the sweep and pull out," Ji-woo said quietly. He was younger than Do-yoon by 6 years, with kind eyes that had seen too much death. "They're saying 30 minutes. Do-yoon nodded but didn't respond. Something felt wrong. The Valkyrie were insectoid creatures with bodies like crystal and chitin mixed together. They were brutal fighters who never retreated. Yet this base had fallen too easily. Where were the last defenders? Where were the bodies? His scanner picked up movement deep in the western section. Do-yoon signaled his team to follow. They moved through collapsed corridors, weapons ready. The movement signature was weak, scattered. Not a threat. Maybe wounded enemies left behind. Then he heard it. A sound that made him freeze. It was high-pitched, rhythmic, desperate. His translator unit crackled to life, struggling to interpret. The closest translation it could manage was simply, "Help, help, help." "Sir, we should call it in," Ji-woo whispered. Do-yoon held up his hand for silence. He moved toward the sound, stepping carefully over fallen beams. The signal was coming from beneath a collapsed section of the roof. Heavy slabs of their crystalline building material had fallen in layers, creating a pocket underneath. He knelt down and shined his light through a gap. 12 pairs of eyes stared back at him. They were small. So small. Valkyrie juveniles, each no bigger than a human 5-year-old child. Their crystalline carapaces hadn't fully hardened yet and looked fragile, almost translucent. They huddled together in the darkness, making that terrible sound, crying for help in a language humans had only ever heard screamed in battle. "Oh God." Ji-woo breathed beside him. "They're kids," Do-yoon's mind raced. Protocol was clear. Eliminate all enemy presence. The Valkyrie had shown no mercy to human colonies. Women, children, elderly. None had been spared when the Valkyrie attacked. Command would order these juveniles destroyed. They were the enemy after all. He looked at their eyes. Terrified, helpless. "Get the lifting equipment," Do-yoon said. "Sir?" Ji-woo's voice was uncertain. "We're getting them out." "Captain, orders." "I know the damn orders, Corporal." Do-yoon's voice was firm but not angry. "Get the equipment." "That's an order." Ji-woo stared at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Yes, sir." What followed was 6 hours of careful, exhausting work. Do-yoon had his team cordon off the area and report it as a potential munitions cache that needed careful clearance. He and Ji-woo worked mostly alone, lifting debris piece by piece. The crystalline slabs were heavy and sharp. Do-yoon's hands were bleeding inside his gloves within the first hour. The juveniles watched them work. At first they pressed themselves against the far wall, terrified of the humans. But slowly, as they realized Do-yoon and Ji-woo meant no harm, they crept closer. Their translator picked up fragments of their communication. "Giants, careful, they help." One of the juveniles was trapped under a smaller piece of crystal. Do-yoon could see its leg was bent wrong. He spoke softly, knowing it probably couldn't understand. "I'm going to lift this, okay? Stay still." He lifted. The juvenile made a sharp sound of pain but pulled itself free. Ji-woo was there immediately with his medical kit. He worked quickly, stabilizing the leg with a splint made from bandages and a piece of metal. The juvenile touched Ji-woo's hand with one small crystalline claw, a gesture that seemed like gratitude. "Water," Ji-woo said. "They need water." They had brought emergency supplies. Do-yoon poured water into a shallow piece of debris that could serve as a bowl. The juveniles rushed to it, drinking desperately. How long had they been trapped? Since the battle started? Longer. 2 more hours passed. They cleared more debris. 9 of the juveniles could walk now. 3 were still trapped under a particularly heavy slab. Do-yoon studied it, calculating angles and weight distribution. One wrong move and the whole thing would collapse further. "We need to lever it from this side," he said. "Ji-woo, when I lift you pull them out, fast." "That slab weighs 300 kilos, sir." "I know." Do-yoon positioned himself, planted his feet, and pushed against the lever bar they'd rigged. Every muscle in his body screamed. The slab shifted, moved, lifted. Now, he grunted. Jiwoo dove in and pulled the 3 juveniles clear. Doyen held the weight for 5 more seconds, then let it drop. The crash echoed through the ruins. He collapsed against a wall, chest heaving. All 12 were free now. The juveniles gathered together, touching each other with their small claws, making sounds that might have been relief or joy. One of them approached Doyen where he sat. It reached out slowly and touched his bleeding hand with remarkable gentleness. Its crystalline surface was cool and smooth. Doyen smiled despite his exhaustion. "You're welcome, little one, sir," Jiwoo said softly. "We have company." Doyen looked up. In the shadows of the corridor, barely visible, stood a full-grown Velkhari warrior. Its carapace was battle-scarred, its body language ready for violence. It had weapons but hadn't drawn them. The warrior's multifaceted eyes fixed on Doyen, then on the juveniles, then back to Doyen. The moment stretched like a blade. Then the warrior stepped backward into the darkness and disappeared. It didn't attack. It didn't sound an alarm. It simply witnessed what had happened here and left. Doyen let out a breath he hadn't known he was holding. "What do we do with them now?" Jiwoo asked, looking at the 12 small aliens. "Good question." Doyen activated his secure comm. "Command, this is Captain Han. I'm in the western section. I've found survivors, non-combatants, requesting medical evacuation and transfer to civilian holding." There was a long pause. Then Captain clarify. "Human survivors?" "Negative, Command. Velkhari juveniles. 12 of them. They're injured and need immediate care." Another pause. Longer this time. "Captain Han, you are ordered to neutralize and proceed with mission completion." Doyen closed his eyes. He had known this was coming. "Command, I can't do that." "These are children. I'm requesting, ya Captain, you will follow orders." "No, sir. I won't." The silence on the comm was deafening. "Finally, extract yourself and your team immediately. File a full report upon return." "This isn't over, Captain." "Understood, Command." Han out. He looked at Jiwoo, who was trying to hide a smile. "Court-martial for sure," Jiwoo said. "Probably." Doyen stood up and looked at the juveniles. "Let's get them somewhere safe." They led the 12 small Velkhari out of the ruins carefully. Doyen contacted the neutral medical corps that operated in the buffer zones. Within an hour, a medical shuttle arrived. The neutral medics asked no questions, just took the juveniles with professional efficiency. As the shuttle lifted off, one of the juveniles pressed against the window, looking back at Doyen. It raised one small claw in what might have been a wave. Doyen waved back. He didn't know it then, but that simple gesture would change everything. The warrior in the shadows had recorded everything. The evidence was already traveling through Velkhari command channels. And deep in enemy territory, in a palace of crystal spires, a matriarch was about to see something that would shake her understanding of humans to its core. But for now, Doyen just felt tired and satisfied. He had made his choice. Whatever came next, at least he could live with that choice. In a war full of death and horror, he had chosen mercy. And mercy, as he would soon discover, had a way of echoing far beyond the moment it was given. 8 months had passed since Tertius 7. Captain Han Doyen had received his reprimand, a formal note in his file about wasting military resources and ignoring direct orders. They hadn't court-martialed him. The war was going poorly, and they needed experienced officers more than they needed to make examples. Doyen tried not to think about those 12 small faces anymore. He had done what he could. That had to be enough. Then the peace talks began. It happened suddenly. After 3 years of brutal warfare, the Velkhari sent a delegation to Prometheus Point, a neutral station in deep space. They wanted to negotiate. Humanity, exhausted and losing colonies faster than they could defend them, agreed immediately. Ambassador Choi Minho led the human delegation. He was 50 years old, with gray hair and permanent exhaustion in his eyes. He had lost his own family to a Velkhari raid 2 years ago, but he still believed peace was possible. Had to believe it, because the alternative was extinction. The negotiations dragged on for weeks. Every point was contested. Territory reparations, prisoner exchanges, demilitarized zones. Both sides were suspicious, angry, grieving. Trust was impossible when both civilizations had buried millions of their dead. Then came the day everything changed. Doyen was on leave, visiting his family on Mars Colony, when he got the emergency summons. Report to Prometheus Point immediately. Priority Alpha. He didn't even have time to say goodbye properly to his mother before he was on a military transport. When he arrived at the station, he was escorted directly to the command center. Ambassador Choi was there, along with Commander Yoon Hyeri, the military attaché. Both looked stressed in a way that went beyond normal negotiation pressure. Captain Han, Choi said without preamble, the Velkari have made a demand. One that concerns you directly. Doyen felt ice in his stomach. Sir? They're offering a full peace treaty. Complete cessation of hostilities, return of all occupied territories, prisoner exchanges, the works. Everything we've been fighting for. That sounds too good to be true, sir. It is. There's a condition. They're demanding that you be delivered to their homeworld Velkara Prime, to stand before their High Matriarch. You specifically. By name. The room seemed to tilt. Doyen sat down without being invited. I don't understand. Commander Yoon stepped forward. She was a hard woman with sharp features and sharper instincts. Neither do we. They won't explain. They say your presence is required by sacred law. When we pressed for details, they said only that you have been witnessed by the Sentinel, and that your judgment awaits. Judgment? Doyen's mouth was dry. Are they asking for my execution? Some kind of war crimes tribunal? We don't know, Choi admitted. They refuse to clarify. All they say is that you must come, and you must come alone. No weapons, no guards, no other humans. Just you. And if I refuse? They walk away from the table. The war continues. Choi's voice was heavy. Captain, I need to ask you something. Have you had any unusual contact with the Velkari? Anything that might explain this? Doyen thought back. Battles blurred together after 3 years. Then he remembered. Tertius 7, 8 months ago, I found some Velkari juveniles trapped in rubble after a battle. I got them out. Sent them to neutral medics. The room went silent. You what? Commander Yoon's voice was sharp. There were 12 of them. Children. I couldn't just leave them to die. Choi and Yoon exchanged looks. Choi pulled up something on his tablet, scanning quickly. There was a note in your file. A reprimand for resource waste. I didn't read the full report. He pulled it up now, reading carefully. His expression changed as he read. You spent 6 hours extracting enemy juveniles under dangerous conditions. Choi said slowly. Against direct orders to eliminate all enemy presence. You provided them medical care and water, then contacted neutral medics for evacuation. Yes, sir. Did you know who they were? What clan they belonged to? They were children, sir. That was all that mattered to me. Choi set down his tablet and rubbed his eyes. Captain, we've been researching Velkari culture since this demand came through. They're intensely communal. Their young are raised collectively by the clan. Harming juveniles is their deepest taboo, and protecting the young of another clan, even an enemy clan, creates something they call a debt of life. I don't understand what that means. Neither do we fully, but we think you may have saved the children of someone important. Maybe very important. Choi looked at him steadily. The question is whether they want to honor that debt or punish you for being involved in the battle that endangered them in the first place. Commander Yoon crossed her arms. It's obviously a trap. They're using the promise of peace to lure in a valuable target. Captain Han has tactical knowledge, security clearances, information about our defensive positions. Once they have him, they'll extract everything and kill him. Maybe, Choi said. Or maybe they mean exactly what they say. We don't know enough about their culture to be certain. With respect, sir, we can't risk it. We can't hand over one of our officers on the vague promise of peace. And we can't ignore an offer that could end this war. Choi turned to Doyen. Captain, I won't order you to do this. I can't. If this is a trap, we're sending you to your death. But I need you to understand what's at stake. This war's killing us. We've lost 17 colonies. Civilian casualties are approaching 50 million. Our military is stretched beyond breaking. If we don't get peace soon, we might not survive another year. Doyen felt the weight of all those numbers. 50 million dead. More dying every day. And they were offering to stop it. All they wanted was him. What would happen to the negotiations if I refused? He asked. They end. Today. The Velkari delegation has already made it clear. This isn't negotiable. You or nothing. How long do I have to decide? They want an answer in 6 hours. Doyen stood up and walked to the observation window. Outside, stars gleamed cold and distant. Somewhere out there, the war was still raging. People were dying while he stood here. He thought about those 12 small aliens, their eyes wide with fear and hope. He had saved them because it was the right thing to do, not because he expected anything in return. But now that choice had ripples he never imagined. If there was even a chance this could end the war, how could he refuse? "I'll go," he said quietly. "Captain," Commander Yoon started. "I'll go," Doyen repeated, turning to face them. "If there's a chance this is real, I have to try. And if it's a trap, then at least I'll die knowing I did everything I could to end this war." Choi looked at him with something like respect. "You're certain?" "No, but I'm going anyway." "I want to go with him," a voice said from the doorway. Doyen turned. Park Ji-woo stood there in full uniform. He must have arrived on the same transport. His friend's face was set with determination. "Corporal Park," Commander Yoon said sharply. "This discussion is classified. Then charge me with eavesdropping later, ma'am. I'm going with Captain Han." "The Velkari specified he must come alone," Choi said gently. "Then I'll follow in a separate ship. I'll wait in orbit. But I'm not letting him go alone into enemy territory." Doyen felt warmth in his chest. "Chiwoo, don't argue, sir. You saved those kids because it was right. Now I'm doing what's right. We're a team," Choi sighed. "The Velkari won't allow anyone else on their homeworld. But Corporal Park can travel to Velkari space on our diplomatic ship. He'll have to stay on the ship, though. Those are the terms," Ji-woo nodded. "Good enough." The next hours passed in a blur. Doyen was briefed on what little they knew about Velkari culture and customs. He was given medical checks, psychological evaluations, and made to record messages for his family in case he didn't return. When he finally stood in the docking bay, preparing to board the Velkari transport, Ambassador Choi approached him one last time. "Captain Han, you're the bravest man I've ever met. Or the most foolish. I honestly don't know which." "Both, probably," Doyen said with a slight smile. "Come back alive. That's an order from a civilian, which means it doesn't count for much. But come back anyway." "I'll do my best, sir." The Velkari transport was waiting. It looked like a crystalline insect, all sharp angles and translucent surfaces. As Doyen walked toward it, Ji-woo caught his arm. "See you on the other side, Captain. See you on the other side, Corporal." Doyen boarded the alien ship. The door sealed behind him with a sound like breaking ice. Through the transparent walls, he could see Ji-woo and the others watching. Then the ship pulled away from the station and they disappeared from view. He was alone now, heading into the heart of enemy territory, with no weapons, no backup, and no idea whether he was flying toward honor or execution, all because 8 months ago, he had chosen to save 12 children instead of following orders. Mercy, he was learning, was the most dangerous virtue of all. The Velkari transport ship was nothing like human vessels. Everything was crystalline and organic at once. Walls that seemed to breathe with faint light, corridors that curved in ways that made no geometric sense. Doyen had been assigned a small chamber with a sleeping platform and basic amenities adapted for human physiology. They had done their research. He was treated courteously but kept isolated. Meals were delivered by automated systems. The food was bland but nutritious, carefully formulated to be safe for human consumption. For the first 3 days, he saw no Velkari at all. On the 4th day, someone knocked on his door. The sound surprised him. Everything else had been automated. He opened the door to find a Velkari standing there, smaller than the warriors he had faced in combat. Its crystalline carapace had a slight blue tint, and its posture seemed almost nervous. "Captain Han Doyen," it said through a translation device. "I am Envoy Kelmar. I have been assigned to attend to your needs during the journey." "Thank you," Doyen said carefully. "Please come in." Kelmar entered, moving with the characteristic clicking gait of Velkari. Up close, without the context of battle, Doyen could appreciate how beautiful they were. Light refracted through their carapaces in subtle rainbows. "You are comfortable?" Kelmar asked. "Yes, I appreciate the accommodations." "It is proper. You are a guest, not a prisoner." Kelmar paused. "I wanted to meet you. To see the human who saved the royal brood." Doyen's heart skipped. "Royal brood?" "The 12 juveniles you rescued on Tertius 7. They were offspring of the High Matriarch herself. Direct lineage. You did not know this?" "I knew they were children." That was all that mattered. Kelmar made a sound like chimes. Doyen's translator indicated it might be laughter or surprise. "Remarkable. You risked punishment from your own leaders to save enemy young, not even knowing their significance." Would it have made a difference if I had known? To you, I think not. That is why you are here. Kelmar settled onto a resting position. May I ask why you did it, truly? Doyen thought about how to explain. In war, we all do terrible things. We have to, or we die. But those juveniles hadn't done anything. They were just scared and trapped and hurting. I couldn't add to that. I couldn't be part of making children suffer, no matter what species they belonged to. Your people have suffered greatly at our hands. We have shown no such mercy to human young. I know. The words were heavy, but I don't want to become the thing I'm fighting against. If I kill children because my enemy kills children, then what's the difference between us? Where does it end? Kelmar was quiet for a long moment. You speak wisdom that many of my own people struggle to understand. There is a faction, the crystalline purists, who believe any debt to humanity is shameful. They have called for your execution. Are they likely to succeed? I do not know. The High Matriarch has not revealed her judgment, but I think you should understand what you are walking into. This is not just about you. It is about the future of our people, about whether we can acknowledge that our enemies might be worthy of honor. Over the following days, Kelmar visited regularly. They talked about many things. Doyen learned about Velkari society, how their communal nature made them see individuals as parts of a greater whole, how their young were raised by the entire clan, not just biological parents, how protecting another clan's juveniles was the highest honor one could achieve, transcending even war. When a Velkari sees you protecting young that are not yours, risking yourself for them, it speaks to the deepest part of our nature, Kelmar explained. It says that you understand what we value most, that you could be clan even though you are so different. And the debt of life? When someone saves a life, especially a royal life, they become tied to that life forever. In our history, such debts have ended blood feuds, created alliances between rival houses, even reshaped our government. It is sacred law, older than our recorded history. Doyen also maintained contact with Earth, though the messages took hours to transmit across the distance. Dr. Li Yunji, a xenobiologist, was assigned to brief him remotely. She sent him detailed files on Velkari culture, language, and customs. One evening, he received a personal message from Park Jiwoo. His friend's face appeared on the screen, smiling despite obvious worry. Hey, Captain. We're 3 days behind you, following in the diplomatic ship. Can't wait to tell you about the food here. It's terrible. A pause. Listen, I've been reading everything I can about the Velkari. From what I understand, the fact that they're bringing you to the Matriarch herself is significant. They don't do that for prisoners or enemies they plan to execute. You're being treated as someone important. That has to mean something, right? Doyen smiled at the screen, wishing he could respond in real time. I hope you're right, Jiwoo. By the second week, Doyen had learned enough of the Velkari language to understand some basic conversations. Their language was tonal, with clicking consonants and humming vowels that his human vocal cords struggled to reproduce. But Kelmar was patient, encouraging his attempts. You are trying, Kelmar said one day. That matters to us. It shows respect. I want to understand. If I'm going to stand before your matriarch, I want to do it properly. The matriarch already knows you are respectful. Sentinel Thala has provided her with complete recordings of what happened on Tertius 7. Sentinel Thala? The warrior who witnessed your actions. She is one of the matriarch's personal guards and one of her daughters. She was on Tertius 7 leading the defense. When the battle was lost, she stayed behind to destroy sensitive materials. Instead, she found you saving our young. She could have killed you then. She chose not to. Doyen remembered that moment, the warrior in the shadows. Why not? You would have to ask her. But I think she wanted to see if you would actually complete the rescue, or if you would harm them once you thought you were unobserved. You passed a test you did not know you were taking. In the third week, Doyen asked Kelmar about the juveniles themselves. Are they well? The ones I rescued? They are thriving. They are adolescents now, growing strong. They speak of you often. They remember? Velkari have excellent memories, especially of emotionally significant events. They remember the giant with gentle hands who pulled them from darkness and gave them water. They remember your companion who sang softly to calm them. Yes, Captain Han, they remember. The thought warmed something in Doyen's chest. I'd like to meet them again if that's possible. It is more than possible. They will be present at your judgment. It is their right, as the ones whose lives were saved. As they entered the final days of the journey, Kelmar's visits became more serious. The envoy taught Doyen the proper protocols for approaching the Matriarch, the gestures of respect in Velkhari culture, the phrases he would need to know. "Remember," Kelmar said, "do not show your teeth when you meet her. To us it appears aggressive. Keep your hands visible and move slowly. Speak clearly, but do not shout. And most importantly, speak truth. The Matriarch can sense deception through harmonics we produce. Humans are different, but she is very old and very wise. She will know if you lie." "I don't plan to lie." "That is good, because tomorrow we arrive at Velkhara Prime." That night, Doyen couldn't sleep. He lay on the sleeping platform, staring at the crystalline ceiling that pulsed with soft bioluminescence. Tomorrow he would see the Velkhari homeworld. Tomorrow he would stand before their supreme leader. Tomorrow he would learn whether his act of mercy would be rewarded or punished. He thought about his mother on Mars, probably awake at this hour, worrying about him. He thought about Jiwoo, somewhere behind him in space, following him into danger out of loyalty. He thought about all the people on both sides who had died in this war, and all the people who would die if it continued. And he thought about 12 small aliens huddled in darkness, crying for help. He had made his choice then without hesitation. Now he would face the consequences, whatever they might be. The ship's intercom chimed softly. Kelmar's voice came through. "Captain Han, come to the observation deck. You should see this." Doyen dressed quickly and made his way through the corridors. Kelmar was waiting at the observation deck, a large space with transparent walls. "There," Kelmar said, pointing. Doyen looked and felt his breath catch. Velkhara Prime hung in space before them, a world of crystal and blue-green seas. Cities glittered on the surface like scattered diamonds connected by networks of light. 3 moons orbited the planet, and orbital structures ringed it like jewelry. It was beautiful. After 3 years of seeing the Velkhari only as enemies, as destroyers of human colonies, seeing their homeworld was jarring. They had built this. They had created beauty in civilization and art. "Welcome to my world," Kelmar said softly. "Tomorrow you will walk its surface. Tonight just look. Remember that we are not so different. We both build, we both create, we both protect what we love." Doyen nodded, unable to speak. The ship began its descent and the crystal cities grew larger. Below, in the largest city, in a palace that had stood for 10,000 years, the High Matriarch was preparing. The human was coming. The one who had saved her children. The one whose actions had shaken her certainty about humanity's nature. Tomorrow would decide everything. The future of 2 species hung in the balance, all because one soldier had chosen compassion over orders. The ship descended toward the gleaming spires, and Doyen's fate rushed up to meet him. The Grand Resonance Chamber was the heart of Velkhari civilization, and it was beyond anything Doyen had imagined. The walls were living crystal that pulsed with light in response to sound and emotion. The ceiling arched impossibly high, carved with 10,000 years of history. And everywhere, Velkhari filled the space. Thousands of them, their crystalline bodies creating a sea of refracted rainbow light. Doyen stood at the entrance in simple ceremonial clothes that Kelmar had provided. He wore no armor, carried no weapons. His hands were empty, his posture carefully neutral. His heart hammered in his chest, but he kept his breathing steady. "Remember what I taught you," Kelmar whispered beside him. "Speak truth. Show respect. The rest will unfold as it must." They walked forward. The crowd parted, creating a path toward the center of the chamber. Doyen could feel thousands of eyes on him. The air hummed with the collective sound of so many Velkhari breathing, moving, existing. His translator struggled to filter meaningful communication from the ambient noise. At the center of the chamber, on a raised platform of dark crystal, sat the High Matriarch. She was enormous. Twice the size of any Velkhari warrior Doyen had faced in battle. Her carapace was deep purple, shot through with veins of silver, aged and magnificent. Her eyes were ancient, holding depths of intelligence and power that made him feel very small and very young. Around her stood her personal guard. Doyen recognized one of them. Sentinel Thala, the warrior who had witnessed his actions on Tertius 7. She watched him with unreadable intensity. "Captain Han Doyen." The matriarch's voice resonated through the chamber without amplification. The crystal walls carried it, enriched it. You stand before the Grand Resonance. You have been summoned to receive judgment for your actions on Tertius 7. Do you understand why you are here? Doyen bowed as Kelmar had taught him. I believe I do, High Matriarch. I saved 12 Velkhari juveniles during the battle. I have learned they were your offspring. They were. They are. 12 of my children, trapped beneath rubble your forces created. Her voice was controlled, but Doyen heard the edge in it. Tell me, human, why did you not leave them to die? Why did you not follow your orders to eliminate all enemy presence? The crowd's humming increased. This was the central question, the one everything hinged on. Because they were children, Doyen said simply. They hadn't chosen this war. They were just afraid and hurt. I couldn't add to their suffering. You risked punishment from your own people. You spent hours in dangerous conditions. You bled for them. Why? Because it was the right thing to do. A new voice cut through the chamber. Lies. A large Velkhari warrior stepped forward from the crowd. His carapace was dark red, battle-scarred. This is manipulation. This human saw an opportunity to appear merciful, to gain strategic advantage. Humans are cunning. They understand we value our young. This was calculation, not compassion. War leader Kresh, the matriarch said calmly. You speak for the crystalline purists? I do, High Matriarch. And I say this human should be executed. We cannot allow our sacred laws to be exploited by our enemies. To honor a human with the debt of life is to spit on the graves of all Velkhari who have fallen to human weapons. The crowd's humming grew louder, discordant. Doyen could feel the tension rising. Kelmar had warned him about this. The purists believed any acknowledgement of humanity's capacity for good was weakness. Your position is noted, war leader, the matriarch said. But this is not solely my judgment to render. Sentinel Thala, you witnessed the events on Tertius 7. Speak now before the Grand Resonance. Thala stepped forward. She moved to the center of the platform and activated a holographic projector. The air above the chamber filled with images. Doyen saw himself from Thala's perspective, kneeling beside the rubble, shining his light through the gap. The moment his face changed when he saw the juveniles. Then the hours that followed. Every moment of the rescue, shown in perfect detail. The crowd watched in silence. They saw Doyen lifting debris until his hands bled. They saw Park Jiwoo splinting a broken leg with careful gentleness. They saw Doyen straining to lift the massive slab, his face contorted with effort. They saw him collapse afterward, exhausted. And they saw the moment when the injured juvenile touched his hand and Doyen smiled despite his exhaustion. I was prepared to kill this human, Thala said, her voice carrying clearly. I had a clear shot. He was vulnerable, focused on the juveniles. But I waited. I wanted to see if this was deception, if he would harm them once he thought he was unobserved. The hologram shifted. It showed Jiwoo softly singing to calm the frightened juveniles, a human lullaby that needed no translation. It showed Doyen giving them water, speaking softly even though they couldn't understand his words. He never faltered, Thala continued. He never showed anything but care for our young, and when I revealed myself, he did not try to use them as hostages or shields. He simply ensured they were safe and let me leave. This was not calculation. This was character. War leader Kresh made a harsh sound. Recording can be edited, interpreted. This proves nothing except that humans can perform convincing acts. Then let the young speak for themselves, the matriarch said. Bring forward the 12. A doorway opened in the chamber wall. 12. Velkhari entered, younger than adults but no longer the small creatures Doyen had rescued. They had grown in 8 months, their carapaces hardening, their bodies stronger. But he recognized them. Something in the way they moved, the pattern of light in their crystalline structures. They approached Doyen directly, ignoring protocol. They surrounded him, touching his hands, his arms, his shoulders with their claws. The gestures were gentle, affectionate. Their harmonics filled the chamber with sounds that the translator rendered as joy, recognition, gratitude. One of them, the one whose leg Jiwoo had splinted, stepped forward. It faced the matriarch and spoke in clear, ringing tones. "Mother, we remember. We remember the darkness and the fear. We remember thinking we would die. Then the giant came with light. He was so large and we were so afraid. But his hands were gentle. He hurt himself to free us. He gave us water. He saved us." Another spoke. "When I was trapped under the crystal, I was in so much pain. I thought the giant would just break me free quickly, not caring if he hurt me more. But he was careful, so careful. He spoke softly even though we couldn't understand. He made us feel safe." One by one, the 12 spoke. Their testimony was simple, honest, powerful. They remembered everything. And they were certain. This human had shown them mercy when he had no reason to. He had treated them with a gentleness that transcended war and species. The chamber's crystals began to resonate with a new harmonic. Doyen didn't need a translator to understand it. The collective emotion of thousands of Velkari, responding to the testimony of the young. It was overwhelming, a pure note of recognition. The matriarch stood. The chamber fell silent. "War Leader Kresh, you say this human cannot be trusted. That his actions were calculated deception." She gestured to the 12. "These are my children. They speak truth. The crystals themselves sing with the truth of their words. Would you call them liars?" Kresh's posture slumped slightly. "No, High Matriarch. But to honor a human, to honor one who embodies our highest values is not weakness. It is wisdom." The matriarch's voice was gentle but firm. "You fear that acknowledging humanity's capacity for good will make us weak? I say that refusing to acknowledge it makes us blind." She turned to Doyen. Her ancient eyes studied him. "Captain Han Doyen, I have lost many children to this war. 3 entire broods dead before they could grow. When I learned that the 12 survived because a human chose mercy over orders, it broke something in me. I had believed humans were incapable of such choice. I was wrong." She descended from her platform, moving to stand directly before him. Up close, she was even more imposing. But there was no threat in her posture. "You have fulfilled our oldest law. Protect the young, regardless of the cost. You are owed the debt of life. But more than that, you have shown me that peace is possible. If a human soldier in the midst of battle can choose compassion, then perhaps we can choose to end this war." The matriarch raised her voice to address the chamber. "I declare Captain Han Doyen an honor sibling of the royal brood. He is the first human to hold formal status in our society. He is clan." The chamber erupted. Some Velkari made sounds of approval, their harmonics joyful. Others, likely purists, were discordant, angry. But the matriarch's word was law. She turned back to Doyen. "But this honor comes with a condition. You must remain on Velkara Prime for 1 year. You will learn our ways. You will teach us yours. You will be a bridge between our peoples. Do you accept?" Doyen's mind raced. A year here, away from home, away from his family and friends. But if it meant peace, if it meant no more deaths, "I accept, High Matriarch." She touched his shoulder with one massive claw, gentle despite her size. "Then it is done. Let the grand resonance record this moment. Let the crystals remember. Today, an enemy became family." The 12 pressed closer to Doyun, their harmonics filled with happiness. One of them, the smallest, spoke softly. "You saved us once. Now you save everyone. Thank you, sibling." Doyen felt something warm and wet on his face. He was crying, he realized, not from fear or sadness, but from overwhelming relief. He had been so afraid, so certain he was walking to his death. Instead, he had found acceptance, honor, hope. War Leader Kresh stood rigid, his posture showing displeasure. But even he bowed to the matriarch's judgment. The purists would not be happy, but they would obey. As the ceremony concluded and Velkari began to disperse, Sentinel Thala approached Doyen. "I should have killed you that day," she said quietly. "By all military logic, I should have. But I chose to witness instead. I am glad I did. Thank you," Doyen managed, "for giving me the chance. Do not thank me yet, human. The next year will be difficult. Many still see you as enemy, but you have allies now. The 12, and those who believe in the possibility of peace. Use them well." Later, in quarters assigned to him in the palace, Doyen sent a message to Park Jiwoo and to Earth. The transmission was simple. "I'm alive. I'm staying for a year. And the war might actually end. Tell my mother I'm okay.
Tell everyone there's hope now.
Real hope. He looked out his window at the crystal city below. In the distance, he could see the grand resonance chamber still glowing. Tomorrow would begin his new role. But tonight, he let himself feel the incredible weight lift from his shoulders. He had survived. More than that, he had succeeded in ways he never imagined. One act of mercy, 8 months ago, had rippled outward to change the fate of 2 civilizations. Now he just had to hope he could live up to the impossible expectations that came with being a bridge between worlds. The year on Velkara Prime changed Han Doyen in ways he never expected. The first months were the hardest. He lived in the royal palace, given quarters that were luxurious but alien. Everything was designed for Velkari physiology. He constantly bumped his head on doorways, struggled with furniture that wasn't meant for his body shape, and felt perpetually out of place. The crystalline purists made their displeasure known. They never attacked him directly, but they made sure he felt unwelcome. They would fall silent when he entered rooms. They refused to acknowledge his greetings. Some left markers outside his quarters, symbols that Kelmar quietly explained meant outsider and contamination. But Doyun had allies. The 12 visited him daily, eager to learn about humans and to teach him about Velkari culture. Through them, he learned the language properly. The clicks and hums became natural to him, though his human vocal cords could never quite match the full range of Velkari speech. "You sound like a juvenile," one of them teased gently. "But we understand you. That is what matters." He learned their customs, how to show respect through posture and harmonics, how to participate in their communal meals, where food was shared and conversation flowed through layered tones, how to navigate the complex social hierarchies that governed Velkari life. And he taught them about humanity, about Earth's cultures and diversity, about human music and art, about the things humans valued, individuality, choice, the concept of privacy that was so foreign to communal Velkari thinking. "You are all so separate," one of the 12 observed during a lesson. "Each human is an island. How do you not feel lonely all the time?" "We connect differently," Doyun explained. "We choose our connections. That makes them special. When a human loves someone, it's because they chose to, not because society expected it." This fascinated the Velkari. The idea that bonds could be voluntary rather than obligatory was revolutionary to them. Some found it beautiful. Others found it disturbing. 5 months into his stay, a crisis erupted. A mining accident on a neutral world called Kepler 442c trapped workers underground. Both human and Velkari miners were caught in the collapse. Rescue attempts from both sides were failing. Doyun saw an opportunity. He contacted Park Jiwoo, who had been waiting patiently in orbit for months. "We need to coordinate a joint rescue operation. Humans and Velkari working together." "The military will never approve that," Jiwoo said. "The ceasefire is fragile. Neither side trusts the other enough for joint operations." "Then we don't ask permission. We just do it." What followed was 3 days of intense coordination. Doyun worked with Sentinel Thala to organize Velkari rescue teams. Jiwoo coordinated human rescue teams. They shared technical specifications, mining data, and rescue protocols. Both sides were suspicious at first, but the urgency of the situation overrode politics. The operation was chaotic. Human equipment didn't interface well with Velkari technology. Communication was difficult. Cultural misunderstandings caused friction. But they worked through it. Velkari strength combined with human precision. Velkari seismic sensors guided human drilling equipment. Human medical supplies supplemented Velkari healing technologies. They saved 47 lives. 28 humans and 19 Velkari. When the last miner was brought to the surface, the rescue teams from both species stood together, exhausted and covered in dust. Doyun watched as a human medic worked on a Velkari miner, and a Velkari healer tended to a human's broken leg. In that moment, covered in dirt and driven by the simple goal of saving lives, the war seemed very far away. The footage of the rescue spread across both human and Velkari space. It was impossible to suppress, and neither government really wanted to. People saw what was possible when the 2 species cooperated instead of fighting. The High Matriarch summoned Doyun after the rescue. "You have shown my people what I hoped they would see. That working with humans does not diminish us. It makes us capable of things we could not achieve alone." "It worked because everyone wanted it to work," Doyun said. "People are tired of war. They're ready for something different. Then we must give them that something." She paused, her ancient eyes thoughtful. When your year ends, what will you do? I haven't decided yet. Part of me wants to go home, but part of me thinks there's more work to do here. There is always more work to do. The question is whether you are willing to continue doing it. As the months passed, Doyun's presence became less controversial. He participated in Valkyrie cultural events. He attended ceremonies and festivals. He learned to appreciate the beauty of their crystalline cities and the complexity of their social harmonics. The purists still distrusted him, but they could not deny that his presence had benefits. Park Ji-woo was finally allowed to visit the surface. The reunion was emotional. They embraced while the 12 watched curiously. You look different, Ji-woo observed. More confident. More at peace. I feel different. This year has taught me that the enemy isn't as different from us as we thought. They love their children. They create beauty. They laugh and mourn and hope. Just like us, Ji-woo had news. The peace treaty is moving forward. Both governments are negotiating terms for a permanent accord. They want to establish a joint human Valkyrie outpost, a place where both species can live and work together. They're calling it Harmony Station. That's ambitious. They want you to help design it. Both sides trust you now. You've become a symbol of what's possible. The final months of Doyun's year were spent working on the Harmony Station project. He collaborated with engineers from both species, translating not just language but concepts and approaches. Human modular design combined with Valkyrie organic architecture. Human privacy considerations balanced with Valkyrie communal spaces. It was exhausting work. But it was also thrilling. They were building something new, something that had never existed before. A place where former enemies could become neighbors, colleagues, friends. When Doyun's year officially ended, the High Matriarch offered to release him from his obligations. You have fulfilled your commitment admirably. You are free to return to your people. Doyun stood in the grand resonance chamber, now familiar and comfortable. He thought about Earth, about his mother, who he missed desperately. About the life he had left behind. But he also thought about the work that remained unfinished. About the fragile peace that still needed nurturing. I'd like to stay, he said. Not as an obligation, but as a choice. I want to be the first director of the Human Valkyrie Cultural Exchange Institute. I want to train the next generation of diplomats and bridge builders. The matriarch made a sound of approval. The 12 will be pleased. They have grown attached to their human sibling, and I've grown attached to them. Park Ji-woo also chose to stay. He established a joint medical initiative, training human and Valkyrie doctors to work together. The first graduating class included students from both species, who had learned to see beyond physical differences to the shared goal of healing. 2 years after the rescue on Tertius 7, Harmony Station was completed. The dedication ceremony was attended by leaders from both species. Ambassador Choi Minho gave a speech about the cost of war and the value of peace. The High Matriarch spoke about the importance of protecting all young, regardless of species. But the moment everyone remembered was the unveiling of the monument in the station's central plaza. It was a collaboration between human and Valkyrie artists. It showed a human soldier kneeling, cradling a small Valkyrie juvenile. The human's hands were gentle, protective. The juvenile's posture showed trust. The inscription was written in both languages. Protection knows no borders. Doyun stood beside the 12 as the monument was revealed. They were adults now, strong and confident, but they still called him sibling. Still visited him regularly. Still reminded him of that day when he had chosen mercy over orders. Thank you, the smallest one said softly. Not just for saving us, for showing everyone that it was possible to save us, that we were worth saving. You were always worth saving, Doyun said. Every child is. The ceremony concluded with a celebration. Humans and Valkyrie mingled freely. Children of both species played together in the common areas, supervised by adults who just months ago might have been shooting at each other. It wasn't perfect. There were still tensions, still mistrust, still those who believed peace was a mistake. But there was hope. Real, tangible hope. That evening, Doyun received a transmission from Earth. He had been nominated for the Terran Peace Medal, the highest civilian honor humanity could grant. The nomination came with thousands of messages of support from people across human space. But the award that meant more to him was the crystalline pendant around his neck. The symbol of an honor sibling, given to him by the High Matriarch herself. It caught the light and threw rainbows across his quarters. He recorded a message to his mother. "I'm okay, Mom, more than okay. I'm exactly where I need to be. I'm building something important. Something that will outlast me. The war is ending. Not because anyone won, but because enough people on both sides decided that peace was worth fighting for instead." Park Ji-woo knocked on his door, interrupting the recording. "Come see this." They went to the observation deck. Below, Harmony Station glittered in the darkness of space. Supply ships from both Earth and Velcra Prime were docking. Families were arriving, the first permanent residents of a shared future. "We did this," Ji-woo said quietly. "It started with you saving those kids, and now look what it's become." It wasn't just me. It was everyone who chose to believe it was possible. Everyone who chose cooperation over conflict. Everyone who chose to see the person instead of the enemy. Still, you started it. You made the first choice. Doyen thought about that moment in the ruins of Tertius 7, the choice that had seemed so simple then. Save the children or leave them to die. He had never imagined that choice would lead here. That one act of mercy would ripple outward to transform two civilizations. "I just did what anyone should have done," he said. But most people wouldn't have. That's what makes it special. That's what makes you special. Doyen shook his head. "I'm not special. I'm just a guy who refused to let fear and anger make his choices for him. Anyone can do that. That's the whole point. Anyone can choose compassion, even in impossible circumstances." Below them, the lights of Harmony Station continued to glow. A beacon in the darkness. A promise that former enemies could build together. That peace was possible. That mercy could change the world. And in the years that followed, that's exactly what happened. More stations were built. More programs established. The generation that grew up on Harmony Station knew both humans and Velcari as neighbors, not enemies. They were bilingual, bicultural, living proof that the divide between species could be bridged. Han Doyen grew older on Harmony Station. His hair turned gray, then white. But his work never stopped. He trained thousands of diplomats and cultural ambassadors. He mediated disputes and celebrated successes. He watched children of both species grow up together, and knew that his choice had been worth it. When he was 60 years old, the High Matriarch died. She was ancient even by Velcari standards, and her passing was mourned across both civilizations. At her memorial, Doyen stood beside the 12 who were now leaders in their own right. They spoke of her wisdom, her courage, her willingness to see past hatred to possibility. "She changed because you showed her it was possible," one of them said to Doyen. "Never forget that. You changed the Matriarch. She changed our people, and together we changed everything." Doyen looked out at the assembled crowd, thousands of humans and Velcari, gathered to honor a leader who had chosen peace. He thought about that desperate soldier in the ruins trying to save children while the world burned around him. That soldier had no idea what his choice would mean, no idea how far his mercy would reach. But mercy had always been the most powerful force in the universe. Stronger than weapons, more enduring than hate. Mercy built bridges where walls had stood. Mercy turned enemies into family. And in the end, mercy saved everyone. The memorial ended with a moment of silence. Then slowly the harmonics began. Both humans and Velcari making sound together. It wasn't quite music, not quite speech. It was something new. Something that belonged to both species and to neither. It was the sound of a shared future. Han Doyen closed his eyes and listened. And he smiled. He had made the right choice. He had always made the right choice.